Clones, dragons, monkeys, ancient weapons, and heaven are just some of the things you'll find in one of the most famous stories in history. I'm not talking about One Piece, but instead Journey to the West and the Monkey King Sun Wukong. Hello everybody, welcome back to Den Kushi, where we dive deep into the world of One Piece and unravel some of the spiciest theories out there. Today we're exploring a fascinating connection that goes beyond the seas of One Piece, the striking parallels between Monkey D. Luffy and the legendary Monkey King Sun Wukong from the classic Chinese novel Journey to the West. Now, you've likely heard people mention this story in relation to One Piece before, but it's time to get read up on how similar these stories really are, and look at what the end of the story tells us about what to expect in future arcs of One Piece. Now, I'm sure you're thinking One Piece draws inspiration from various sources, and Oda has a knack for incorporating cultural elements into his masterpiece. But what if I told you that Luffy's journey shares striking similarities with the Monkey King himself? As always, I'll speedrun some basics, and from there we'll dive deeper and see what One Piece mysteries we can solve. So let's dive into the theory. Okay, Sun Wukong, like Luffy, embarked on an incredible journey that started with a sense of freedom and a thirst for adventure. Luffy, much like the Monkey King, set sail to become the Pirate King and discover the fabled One Piece. Both characters share an innate desire for exploration and the pursuit of dreams. We see this particularly with Luffy in One Piece, where he's very chaotic, like he establishes the current order wherever he goes. Another intriguing connection lies in their companions. Sun Wukong had his loyal companions, including Pigsy, Sandy, and Tripitaka. Similarly, Luffy has his Straw Hat Pirates, a diverse and loyal crew that supports him on his journey. The dynamic between the characters in both stories echo the importance of friendship and camaraderie. Now, in terms of powers and abilities, Sun Wukong possessed incredible power, such as the ability to transform and manipulate his hair into clones, the power to control the clouds, and his famous staff. In One Piece, Luffy's Devil Fruit ability, the Gum Gum Fruit, grants him rubber-like flexibility and strength. Both characters showcase supernatural abilities that set on their respective journeys. Sun Wukong faced powerful deities and formidable challenges during his journey, much like Luffy and his encounters with powerful foes like Yonkos, admirals, and warlords. The theme of challenging authority and overcoming seemingly insurmountable odds is a central element in both narratives. Now, with all that covered, let's get into the real spice, because there are some absolutely wild connections. So the story begins in the east, in the middle of the sea. It's noted there's a mountain that stands between heaven and earth, which of course is a reference to Reverse Mountain. Here we discover an egg that we are told is hatched by the wind, revealing a monkey. This no doubt ties to Roger's egg, Dragon's wind connections, and the monkey clan as a whole, particularly Luffy. The newborn monkey then bows to the 4 compass points, or cardinal directions, north, south, east and west. Some speculate this is what this page in chapter 1 was all about. The monkey goes on to grow up around his own kind, much like Luffy did with Garp, and here's where the first major part of the story happens. The monkey takes an important leap of faith, a theme we know that is very close to Oda. Is probably best demonstrated by Oda's early work, Wanted. One story is centered entirely and concludes with a young male taking an impossible leap that he believes he can make. In Journey to the West, the monkey jumps through a waterfall, and in classic literature, water usually represents the subconscious, so the mind. We see this with Luffy too, as he falls into the sea but is saved by Shanks. By making the leap, the monkey is made the leader of his tribe, or in One Piece, it pretty much shows to Shanks that Luffy is potentially the chosen one, which Shanks goes on to bet on. The Monkey King loves life and all its beauty and grows afraid of dying as he will no longer be a part of it. Now we have another very important part in which the Monkey King decides to travel to the kingdom of man to discover the secrets of life, in the hopes of evading death. What makes this so important, however, is because it represents the fire thief meme, most famous with Prometheus, who stole fire from the gods to give it to the humans so that they could advance their technology, only for that very technology to go on to destroy the humans. It's highly likely this is a huge inspiration to Oda if it is in fact true that Emu has unnatural extended life, highlighted by the fact the inhabitants of Marijois refer to themselves as gods. This is in contrast to Kureha, who seemingly has natural extended life, or youth, the secret of which she tries to tell everyone she encounters, as opposed to it being some esoteric secret. You may have heard me speak a few times before about how I believe this could be a product of her living in a tree or being in touch with natural forces of the world, kind of like the Voice of All Things vibe in a way. Moving on, however, the Monkey King meets a master called Sabaody and is given the name Sun Wukong. You could equate this to Luffy's transformation in Wano into the sun god Nika, but there's multiple times in the story where Luffy has received a new identity and transformed from it. At one point, for example, he's called Lucy, etc. Later on, the Monkey King travels home, only to discover it has been taken over by demons. This could very well reflect the Gorosei and their arrival at Marijois centuries ago. Using strands of his hair, the Monkey King creates an army of clones, a theme we are currently seeing in Egghead. After this, the Monkey King meets the Dragon King, as the Dragon King searches for a weapon. However, it is the monkey that finds the weapon, not the Dragon King. Some may think the Dragon King refers to Kaido, however, it's more likely Kaido is partly inspired by the demons that took over the Monkey King's home, seeing as Wano has connections to Joy Boy, but was in the clutches of Kaido until Luffy liberated it. The Dragon King, referenced in Journey of the West, is more likely tied to the celestial dragons or even Emu. The symbolic reference of the dragon is the West, which is what Marijois is used to represent in One Piece. In this case, the humans that look down on lesser species. This is what initially showed me that Monkey D. Dragon's name is so important and super spicy in terms of the future of the story. Okay, so once the Monkey King has his weapon, he battles his way through Hell, where he is granted true immortality. I think this likely foreshadows Luffy's battle against the Gorosei over time, but tell me what you think it could be in the comments. It's also mentioned that all monkey names are crossed off Death's list henceforth. Anyway, leaving Hell, the Evening Star ensures the Monkey King's entrance into Heaven, the next realm, by which I mean the star was acting as a guiding waypoint. This is exactly what we get with Lodestar in One Piece, which is an island where all magnetic fields gradually arrive at an end. The reference to Lode here means a waypoint, often magnetic, which ties us also to the Lode poneglyphs, and refers to the guiding star, the guiding principle. This star features heavily in the Nativity in the Bible, as well as other myths. After being guided to heaven by the Evening Star, the Monkey King returns home now all the demons are vanquished. However, Heaven's armies are sent against the now immortal Monkey King, and the Monkey King is given the job of the guardian of the Emerald Peaches. In other words, Heaven has come to bring this misfit back into order and into the natural way of things. You know, he's got extended life, he's kind of unnatural at this point, so Heaven's trying to straighten it all out. The peaches are said to be sacred to the Queen of the West, and they are also said to be reborn every few thousand years. The Monkey King is forbidden from eating the fruit, and of course, what does he do? He eats the fruit. It goes without saying this ties to Luffy getting his fruit and how that all comes about. Ultimately, this results in the Monkey King not being invited to a banquet, and in retaliation, the Monkey King freezes some women at the banquet, eats all the celestial food, and drinks all the immortal wine. Now, my gut tells me that this is why we see so many wedding cakes and wedding ceremonies, because rather than having a normal banquet, in Oda's version with One Piece, I think we're going to have a wedding that someone may have not been invited to or banned from, or somebody who, you know, a spurned lover, somebody who loved the bride, and they're going to cause these sort of similar problems. We know freezing is important in One Piece because of it's one of the only ways to like suppress will and stuff like that, like we see the Straw Hat and Marijois. Drop me a comment if you've got any questions about that sort of stuff, but moving on. So after eating all the celestial food and drinking all the immortal wine, the monkey eats a load of immortality drugs and leaves out the Western Gate. So here we have a reference to all the chemistry we see throughout One Piece, from energy steroids to heroes water to hormones with Eva. Heaven, which in One Piece is reflected by the world government, struggles to stop the Monkey King from leaving, but finally sends Arlong and the Beast Spirits to capture him, and they succeed. Arlong, of course, is the name of the fearsome fishman, and Beast Spirits being the inspiration for the Beast Pirates. Every form of execution they tried failed, including trying to behead the Monkey King and putting him in a magical oven, which is personified by Kaido's execution attempts, and Odin boiling in a pot. This all eventually culminates in Buddha arriving and making a wager with the Monkey King. This wager could very well be why Oda included the Davy backfight. However, I'm not too sure personally yet. Alternatively, the wager could be between Emu and the Celestial Dragons, but instead taking the form of an agreement. The Monkey King loses the wager and so is locked by the 5 elements, which are water, earth, fire, metal, and wood, inside a mountain. Later on, a monk frees the Monkey King on the condition that he escorts him to the west, and that is where the story starts and ends. It's cyclical. Okay, so let's unpack some of these last bits because there's a lot going on there. Starting with the 5 elements, this is also featured in One Piece as follows. Water ties to rain god, earth to earth god, fire to sun god, wood to forest god. Now, this leaves us with metal. Pretty easy to explain for those who don't already know. Metal here represents the unnatural or foreign material, a third party, you could say. So, like in Naruto, you have a third party that shows up despite the antagonist and protagonist already beefing it out. In One Piece, we have Luffy versus the world government, or like world system, and then Blackbeard acts as this force coming from the outside to destabilize the established. Also in One Piece, the moon seems to reflect his theme of technology and ideals that are outside the current system. The fact the Monkey King is sealed away using 5 elements suggests Joy Boy, his will or his dream, was also sealed away by the 5 elements, harnessed potentially by the 5 members of the Gorosei. Potentially metal Saturn, considering we've seen him around all this technology, and a lot of Vegapunk references are often metallic or to metal, like his hometown in Karakuri. And finally, the Monkey King is said to be sealed in a mountain far away from the west, which inevitably makes the east, right? So this is undoubtedly Reverse Mountain, which just so happens to be where the Grand Line ends, but also where it starts. So as I mentioned a second ago, notice how the journey to the west starts in the mountain in the east and ends with a mountain in the east. It's because the story is cyclical, like I say, much like the One Piece world. I actually have a video exploring this concept and the idea that inherited will might actually be a curse. This cycle might not be able to be broken until you fulfill the inherited will, which is Joy Boy's dream. Anyway, okay, so thanks for joining us on this little journey. What are your thoughts on the connection between Sun Wukong and Luffy? Do you see other parallels we might have missed? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, subscribe for more One Piece spice. It really helps the channel. I know this isn't my usual type of video, but hopefully you liked it. If you did make it this far, you've just been officially invited to Brook's new tour, and make sure to check out SSJ8 Cody on TikTok for unhinged One Piece content that will probably convince your mum to watch the series. Until next time, keep exploring the Grand Line, and may your dreams be as vast as the open sea. Bye. Hey, it's Denden, and today I theorise 900 years ago, Nefertari Lily was a wife of Emu at Marijwa, much like we saw Saturn say about Ginny. Maybe Emu loved Queen Nefertari Lily, but Lily did not reciprocate these feelings, and as a result, Emu cursed Lily and himself to be bound together, creating the first ever love sickness that we see on Amazon Lily. This meant if Lily tried to leave, her health would rapidly deteriorate and she'd eventually die. Vanderdecken the Ninth was cursed, and he said to Shirahoshi, if she loved another, she would die. Perhaps this means Emu himself cannot leave Marijwa also. If Nefertari Lily decided to leave anyway and fled to Amazon Lily, this would explain the origin of the disease there and the Lily part of the island's name. Additionally, this would explain why all the Kuja are named after flowers, and Alabasta and Amazon Lily have so many ties. Right, so you've heard the premise, but that's just scratching the surface. Where does Dragon come into this? What about Greenbull? Make sure you Amazon that Lily button, and let's get straight into this one. Amazon Lily is a once isolated island that can be found in the Calm Belt, where men are forbidden to enter on penalty of death. Similar to Wano, the island is hostile against strangers generally, and as such, people have developed a strong sense of their own culture, as well as strong haki. We see this in Skypiea too, with Mantra, and Wano, like I said, with Rio. Side note, Rio is an anagram of Yoru, suggesting it may have been a haki-imbued Yoru that was used to carve the poneglyph. But anywho, Amazon Lily is home to the Kuja tribe, who were stated to have been around for generations. although it's unknown for how long exactly they've had a pirate crew. Kuja are named after flowers, yet not a single Kuja we meet in Amazon Lily is actually called Lily, but we can cover that in a second. Over time, the Kuja tribe have become more open to foreigners and also men in general, as we saw Boa bring the Heart Pirates back to Amazon Lily, in addition to Rayleigh being revealed there when the island was attacked by Blackbeard and Kobe. Since Marines developed sea stone ships, they are able to reach the island, leaving Amazon Lily vulnerable to threats, as was again stated in Wano. The geography of the island consists of mostly mountainous rock, but the top seems to be formed by huge petrified snakes. The petrified snakes appear different to the rest of the island, suggesting it is somehow man-made or unnatural. 9 heads are shown, similar to the Kuya symbol, which could very well tie to the Hydra and thus Orochi's fruit. It may be that the original Hydra was petrified by the original user of Boa's fruit, creating the island we see today. However, that is just speculative. But why are we talking about Amazon Lily? Well, because this island has a tragic and deadly disease, a terminal illness known as lovesickness. Lovesickness is an extremely powerful force in the story, which was demonstrated recently with Sanji using the power of love to stop Kizaru's laser. Additionally, we saw Garp's Fist of Love, and I'll cover these powers specifically in an upcoming video. In the series, lovesickness refers to a comedic and exaggerated condition that only affects the empresses of Amazon Lily after supposedly falling deep in love. A notable example is Boa Hancock, the Snake Princess and Warlord of the Sea. She develops a strong romantic attraction to Monkey D. Luffy, the protagonist of the series, after he opposed the world government by punching a celestial dragon. When she is near Luffy or thinks about him, she becomes extremely nervous, her heart races and she may even faint. The irony lies in the contrast between Hancock's usually confident and stoic demeanour as a powerful and fearsome pirate against her vulnerability when it comes to her feelings for Luffy. That said, the sickness itself is no joke, and while Oda often incorporates various comedic elements alongside action and adventure themes, it would appear that the physical symptoms are real enough to completely consume those affected. Gloriosa was a former empress affected by the disease, resulting in her leaving the island, only to return after being forgiven by the mysterious previous empress of Amazon Lily that's yet to be revealed. That said, Gloriosa was also said to be a traitor for leaving and was forced to live on the outskirts on her return. Despite leaving herself, Gloriosa is usually adamant the Empress Amazon Lily stays on the island for its protection, which is an interesting contrast. Some speculate Gloriosa loved Xebec, as she was swooning over Xebec at God Valley. Xebec was said to have died at God Valley, so this would explain why she no longer suffers from the sickness. Fascinatingly, Hiruluk mentioned discovering the cure for a sickness of the heart after visiting the West Blue the same year as the God Valley incident happened. This seems too weird to just be coincidence, but I guess we'll have to see. Additionally, Gloriosa also told us 2 previous rulers actually died of the romantic illness. With the reveal of Shaki, however, as a previous empress that survived, this quote may be a mistake, meaning Gloriosa should have said only 1 previous empress she knows of died of the sickness. Unless, of course, Shaki did die and came back to life somehow. But anyway, Shaki has a steady open relationship with Rayleigh, which may be the reason they have such a relationship is down to what Shaki learned about lovesickness and how to overcome it. But in summary, the lovesickness disease occurs when an empress of Amazon Lily falls in love with a man. If they suppress their emotions, it weakens them and causes them extreme pain. The health of the victim continues to decline and ultimately leads to their death, and in order to cure the disease, the empress must accept their emotion and follow their loved one. This means that leaving Amazon Lily seems to be necessary for the survival of the recipient, as per the former empress Gloriosa and Shakuyaku. Gloriosa also implied that if Hancock, another sufferer of the disease, follows her beloved Luffy, which means leaving the island, she would survive. Outside of this cure, it is unknown if the disease can be cured by other means, or if there is a cure specifically intended for it. I mean, what if, for example, your gender is swapped like with Law, or you have the memories of the person you love erased? Would you still be affected by the disease? I'd be interested to find that out. One last thing I thought I'd bring up about the love sickness is that, funnily enough, the movie Hancock bears a very similar vibe to what we see with the love sickness, and that originally comes from an ancient Egyptian myth, which I'll talk about in a little bit when I get to Alabasta. Okay, so love sickness sucks, but why do I bring it up? Well, love is an important theme in One Piece and is often highlighted by Boa. For example, chapter 798 has Boa on the cover of a chapter called Heart, and her fruit produces a heart that petrifies the infatuated victims. Boa also connects to hearts through the design of her devil fruit, and even guided the heart pirates to Amazon Lily, like I said, breaking the tradition by opening the island to men. Oda infers there's ties between the East and love in the story also, which may be very important to the hidden past of the One Piece world. Gloriosa says the quote, "In the East, they say love is like a hurricane," which is a quote that's first said by Sanji in the East Blue. Boa's main backing track is called Hurricane My Love. And of course the Super Chad, definitely not a fraud, dragon is implied to tie to the wind. This is significant because if you're familiar with the channel, you'll probably know I believe the two sovereigns mentioned by the whales were from the Far East and the Far West. Evidence of this can be found when the whales say the other sovereign will be born very far away, while they themselves are at Fishman Island, which is located under Marijua. In other words, one sovereign was born around Marijua and the other one on the opposite side of the world. I've also discussed how I believe these two sovereigns are drawn to each other by a force, similar to what we see when characters gravitate towards Luffy. In fact, it's often explicitly stated in the story when other characters notice this uncanny ability that Luffy seems to possess, so we can be sure it's relevant. So, if Joy Boy was one sovereign, it makes sense to me that the sovereign on the other side of the world was Lily, as I believe Joy Boy started his journey on the opposite side of the world to Luffy, before the world was flipped upside down, as they say in the story. Now, there are some interesting ties between Queen Nefertari Lily, Amazon Lily, and Alabasta. So next I'll briefly speedrun the connections that support the theory so the video doesn't get too long. Alabasta shares a strong snake, bird, and flower motif with Amazon Lily. The Kuja are named after flowers just like Lily. And King Cobra was the ruler of Alabasta, and he's named after a snake. Kuja itself is the prefix for Kujaku, which is the Japanese for peacock, a flightless bird known for its beauty. And while we see the theme of a flightless bird symbolized in many arcs, in Alabasta it's personified specifically by Karu and his gang, all of whom are flightless birds. The original myth of two lovers becoming ill from being separated originates from ancient Egypt, and we know that Alabasta is inspired by ancient Egypt. And also, if we really want to stretch, we can see Marigold has a hawk, resembles Pell's outfit and his devil fruit. Additionally, Boa's hair was originally a navy blue in the One Piece color walk, similar to her snake, and was sort of changed to a darkened black. There's also a small important detail which is in the theme of marriage, which Boa always accidentally brings up thinking Luffy is proposing. We see this also with Cobra bringing up suitors for Vivi to marry, highlighted in this cover story particularly. But bear that in mind, because I'll add all the when stuff towards the end. Lastly, Hancock made a treaty with the world government for protecting her island, Amazon Lily. Should Hancock not live up to her duties, the treaty would be nullified and all Kuja on land or at sea could be endangered and their island destroyed. This definitely could be reminiscent of Nefertari Lily and Emu, or the government in general, as we see Alabasta has ruins of ancient cities throughout its deserts, and we know Emu mentioned Nefertari made a blunder that assisted the D-Clan. Now, it goes without saying, Joy Boy, of course, ties to Alabasta. I won't go too much into it. We've got the poneglyphs. We've got Cobra being asked to protect the poneglyphs generation to generation for 800 years. We have a letter to Nefertari D Lily, which highlights the letter D, which obviously drew Emu's attention and shocked Emu. And it could very much be the blunder. It's likely that Lily's blunder was something that helped Joy Boy. So rather than go into all the Alabasta connections, you could catch them in our other videos and stuff. But yeah, like we all know at this point, I think Alabasta and Joy Boy, just like Luffy and Vivi, are very, very, very connected. So, but yeah, moving on. So let's look at Greenbull and see where he comes into this, noting how Oda cleverly weaves his parallels to ancient history in the current modern One Piece world. If Nefertari Lily, Emu, and Joy Boy were in a love triangle, then interestingly, this would give a spicy context to Greenbull's tattoo. The tattoo itself means double suicide at Death River. We can be confident the tattoo is relevant because Oda decided to not give Greenbull a shirt, so you can see he's clearly exaggerating it, highlighting it. It gets weirder also when you tie the fact that Greenbull has the woods or forest fruit, which would explain the Amazon part in Amazon Lily's name, as in Amazon rainforest, if he was to connect in here. Not only that, but in Greenbull's first appearance, he mentions photosynthesis. He also mentions that he only eats when he's with a woman, likely meaning on a date, which is our second romantic reference after his tattoo. Interestingly, not long before Greenbull's devil fruit was revealed, we learned about the true nature of Luffy's devil fruit, the sun god Nika. And why do I bring this up? Well, because Greenbull's fruit feeds off the sun, and Luffy's fruit is the power of the sun god. Could either fruits or their users be more connected than we initially thought? One small note is mushrooms are pretty much always seen in Greenbull's panels, which that might be a hint from Oda towards Amazon Lily, as that's where mushrooms feature the heaviest. Furthermore, Greenbull went out of his way to reveal his personal feelings towards unaffiliated nations and discrimination, demonstrating a strong prejudice against the weak. These views are completely in contrast to Monkey D. Dragon, who created an army to oppose these sort of views. Now, speaking of Dragon, they both share a penchant for the colour green too, which is not only the colour that represents will, but also jealousy or envy. I'm thinking the love triangle I mentioned at the beginning may be paralleled by Dragon's relationship with Luffy's mum and with some complications caused by Greenbull. It's speculation, but I wonder if when Dragon was with the Marines, he was in the position that Greenbull is in now. That would be very poetic. But in my next episode of OPM, I'll cover all the possibilities of the previous Empress and look into the details of Luffy's mum further, as it's a huge topic with tons of spice that does need to be done justice. But for the most part, I'm thinking that Dragon and Luffy's mum had a relationship, which we know because Luffy's alive. There's evidence of that. And I think that Greenbull may have struggled with jealousy or may have had some romantic interest in Luffy's mum before Dragon was on the scene. Kind of like a Snape and Lily situation from Harry Potter. Further evidence suggesting a romantic relationship or even a love triangle was significant in the history to begin with can be found in a wide range of imagery in the story depicting weddings. From Sanji's wedding to weddings appearing in cover stories, time and again, Oda shows us hints towards marriage, but the theme never really features that heavily in the story. Most prominently would be Sanji and Pudding's wedding. The marriage motif seems to be attached to the number 80 or 88 by Oda, again representing the two sovereigns in my opinion, with there originally being 8 kingdoms in the east and 8 kingdoms in the west coming together, giving us 88. We see these numbers in Boa's bounty as well as her two sisters' bounty when you put them together. What I'll do here is I'll have the examples on the screen for you just because there's too many to list in this type of video and you can see for yourself there's just tons of wedding references from Oda. Okay, so in conclusion, to recap, I was saying I think Emu wanted Nefertari Lily as a concubine at Marishwa, as we saw with Ginny. Lily likely did not reciprocate the romantic feelings, particularly due to her love for another, which is Joy Boy. This resulted in a curse, creating the first ever love sickness. Lily decided to leave anyway and fled to Amazon Lily, explaining the origin of the disease on that island and the Lily part of the island's name. Additionally, this would explain why all men would be treated as a threat and why the Kuja are named after flowers. In my opinion, Lily was probably due to be married and there would have been some sort of wedding that was due and she ran out on the wedding. I believe that she probably died from the love sickness in an act of defiance, which we then dubbed the lover's suicide on Greenbull's tattoo. Greenbull is particularly significant here because of his fruit and the nature of how that fruit works with Luffy. And there are suggestions that Luffy's mum might have been the forest god user and stuff like this, so it is very interesting. Last thing I'll say is it may even be that Brook was involved due to the ties between his name, his fruit, and the river Styx, which is a term that appears on Greenbull's tattoo. Okay, fellow pirates. Well, thank you for making it this far. Huge shout outs to the TLA Discord, which you can join. Links in the description. That's Elson, Will of Fire, Kuba the Red Sea. Of course, we've got Dill on the audio. Yeah, so just thank you for the whole team. And there's so much more to unpack with this one. So make sure to sub for future updates and all that stuff. We've got some very big projects coming. Share the video if you're feeling spicy. And if you've made it this far, you've just won a free burn bazooka. So just drop me in the comments where you want it delivered, and I'll aim it in that direction and fire it right over to you. So anyway, have a good one. Make sure to be nice to other people, and bye.
Dire Regulus here. Welcome to the Dire Pirates. Today we will be navigating a theory about one of One Piece's strongest characters. And no, I'm not talking about Blackbeard. There's already amazing theories about his powers out there. In this video, we're addressing the shadowy ruler that sits on the empty throne, the one that made Sabo lose his shit, the one and only Imu. The intro. Imu is a character who's only appeared a handful of times in One Piece so far, but their influence predates Luffy's adventure. Presumably a descendant of, if not an actual person from the Void Century, there's very little we know or even can assume about Imu. But then came swinging chapter 1060, when it introduced us to one of Imu's weapons, when they used it to delete the Leloucia Kingdom out of existence. Personally, I think that was our introduction to ancient weapon Uranus, but that's not what I'll be addressing here. Because Imu didn't just erase Leloucia Kingdom and Sabo because they were revolutionaries. No, in fact, he simply did it because none of them were subscribed to this channel. So just to be safe, go ahead and click on subscribe, hit that notification bell. The bell keeps Imu extra happy. So aside from terraforming great weapons, let me tell you what Imu's powers are, and more specifically, which devil fruit they have. And if I'm right, Imu's powers have been hinted to us as far back as Volume 11, Chapter 94 to be specific, which is the ending of Arlong Park. And that's because I think Imu has a Zoan-type devil fruit. The fruit itself is from the Mushi Mushi series, meaning it's a bug-type Zoan devil fruit. And the model is this. That's right. It's the Mushi Mushi no Mi, model Den Den Mushi. The why. I know right now you may think it's crazy, but when you think about the few things we've seen Imu accomplish so far, it all ties together. The Den Den Mushi were inspired by a pseudoscientific concept that was explored in the 1800s. Around 1850, a French occultist called Jacques Toussaint Benoit tested a concept that he and his assistant Mr. Beat Chrétien dubbed the Bacillolinic Sympathetic Compass. It's basically a device that would allow people to send messages through snails, a kind of snail telegraph. The idea is that snails that would touch each other would theoretically create a telepathic link between themselves. So let's say you have a set of 24 snails linked to each other, one for each letter of the alphabet. You could technically send a message by stimulating each snail needed for each letter of your message. Whether the actual thing worked or not is irrelevant, because we know it is the inspiration that Oda took to create the Den Den Mushi. So the Den Den Mushi we all know all have some sort of telepathic link. The main thing that makes me believe that Imu is a Den Den Mushi is their ability to know everything. What's going on, where people are, who's talking to who. I don't see that being possible in any other way in the One Piece universe without being able to tap into the Den Den Mushi network. We just look at chapter 1060. How in the world would Imu know that Sabo, who's been on the run since the Reverie, would be hidden in Leloucia Kingdom? Isn't it also oddly convenient that the hit on Leloucia happens at the exact moment where Sabo takes the risk to contact the rest of the revolutionary army via what, I may ask? A Den Den Mushi. This also probably helps the world government a lot in figuring out where important devil fruits always are. And it would also explain the weak spots that Imu and the Gorosei by proxy seem to have. Think about it. What are the few places where the world government does not have influence? Skypiea, Wano, Zoo, and the Tontata Kingdom that doesn't act in correlation with Dressrosa, and one last one, newspapers. IPS tech seems to have trended more towards dials, which we know can record audio via Brooks' recording of Bink Sake with the Rumbar Pirates, and that would be instead of maybe going towards the Denden Mushi technology. Wano, on the other hand, seems to use smart Tanishi, which are very similar to Denden Mushi but seem to operate on their own separate network. Then there's the Minks of Zu and the Dwarves of the Tontata Kingdom that don't seem to use that technology at all. In the Minks' case, it seems to be more that they never came across that advancement, while in the Tontata's case is that it's known that they do simply release the snails back into the wild. Last but not least, the newspapers. Morgans controls what get printed in them, and they are delivered via seagulls. Morgans easily has access to Denden Mushi, so why doesn't he just do some type of radio show that would be broadcasted through them? Heck, projector Denden Mushis exist, so Morgans could even be the equivalent of a One Piece streamer. But he chooses not to and still relies on paper and birds. And as smart and informed as Morgans is, this makes me think that there's a reason he operates this way. He's probably aware of at least Emu's existence, or maybe that someone is at least checking everything behind the scenes.
I know everything.
So these elements of the One Piece world are outside of Emu's influence because of them existing outside of the Denden Mushi network. Denden Mushi have also been around for generations, so regardless how old Emu is, having a devil fruit based on them remains possible. Also notice how Emu's robe drags behind them as they move. That could be a nod to snails, who leave a trail of slime behind them when they move around. And that's one part of the symbolism. Denden Mushi have a very important feature that's all over the One Piece world on their shell. We can call it the golden ratio, the Fibonacci sequence, or just simply a swirl. Regardless of what you call it, it's been featured in One Piece for a very long time. And it's one of the main differences between Smile Devil Fruits and real Devil Fruits. There are no swirls on Smile Devil Fruits. And then there's the Vinsmoke kids, who all have a swirl, have all had their lineage factor messed with. And what's the only difference between the purity of a real Devil Fruit and a Smile Devil Fruit? It's the lineage factor, which is the reason Smile Devil Fruits are not a sure shot. And this golden ratio is not only everywhere in One Piece, Oda even signs his name with it. If that's not a sign of the swirl pattern being a big thing, I don't know what is. So it would make a lot of sense for the endgame villain to be related to such an important symbol. Let's also not forget that dials are hugely due for a comeback and that they almost all have the golden ratio on them. All I'm saying here is that Emu's Denden Mushi Zoan will allow them to tap into the lineage factor realm, which is symbolized by the golden ratio. More on that in the next section, which is Emu's possible powers. Now, I won't dwell on the possible hockey abilities that Emu might be able to pull off. There's no evidence to them yet, but let's just assume that they're going to be on the higher end of what we've seen. I'm more interested in exploring the powers that would be related to the Denden Mushi side of things. On a basic level, a defensive ability that could be introduced is Snail Slime. What's interesting with Snail Slime is that there's two kinds. One of them is an adhesive that allows the snail to stick to different surfaces. The other one is the one that allows the snail to travel via adhesive locomotion, what we call the slime trail. The slime trail also coats the snail's body, protecting it from different obstacles, as sharp as blades. With swords being as predominant as they are in the One Piece universe, it would be a very interesting defensive ability to give to Emu, making him impervious to blades themselves. But what would be even cooler is where this Devil Fruit's awakening could go. Remember that stuff, how the golden ratio is linked to the whole concept of lineage factors, which are the secret ingredient of Devil Fruits? One of the most fun aspects about the Denden Mushi is the fact that they kind of morph into whoever's communicating through them. What if the awakening associated with this species Devil Fruit would allow the user to tap into the lineage factor of anyone who's ever used the Denden Mushi network? This would mean that Emu can mimic the lineage factor of just about everyone we've seen, which means, in a way, their powers and abilities. Wouldn't that be a set of powers on par with the imaginative possibilities of the sun god Nika Devil Fruit that Luffy has? Then there's Emu's eyes, the famous spiral eyes. Mihawk, Caribou, Zunesha, even Projector Denden Mushis and others have them. I don't necessarily have a solid take myself yet on those special eyes, but needless to say, they'll probably be related to Imu's powers. If anything, I think One Piece film Red might have a tiny hint. In the movie, Shanks can cancel the effects of the future sight aspect of observation haki using his own haki. Maybe people with spiral eyes could have their own advanced haki ability. This could explain why Mihawk is able to be Shanks' rival. Maybe the ability allows him to counter Shanks' counter. Possibly that form of haki is creating a fake foresight to the observation haki user, making the opponent believe in a fake version of the incoming future. Or maybe something even crazier, akin what Itachi does with his Sharingan in Naruto and makes people hallucinate stuff. So that covers the powers, but if Imu is a snail, Oda probably got the idea somewhere. Which brings us to the mythological roots. We don't know yet if Imu is male, female, or other, but the mythological stories that could be parallels are giving me the impression that Imu will at least look like a woman. I found 4 Asian myths and 1 god that could possibly be inspirations for Imu. We're going to go over 2 of the myths, and the other 2 are kind of redundant, and then the god. The first is the Japanese myth of the Sazai Oni, which translates to shellfish ogre or shellfish demon. The most popular legend associated to it tells the story of pirates who save a drowning woman. Once on board though, the woman realizes that the pirates' motivations to save her were more lustful than noble. So that night they all take turns visiting her chambers against her will, but then karma swings back against them. Turns out the woman was actually a shape-shifted Sazai Oni, and she goes around the ship stealing away the family jewels of every pirate on board. Realizing what she's done, the men trade all the treasures they've accumulated to her in exchange for their precious back. In the original Japanese, it's a play on words because men's balls are often referred to as golden balls, so she traded gold for gold. So pirates, treasures, sea monsters, and word plays. It's all very One Piece. The second myth that could be an inspiration is from Javanese folklore. Now, Javanese folklore is interesting in itself because that's where you can find the story about a certain king called Jayabaya. It's something I've covered in one of my earliest videos, but basically he's often thought to be an inspiration for the figure of Joy Boy himself. But for now we're covering the story of Kyong Emas, which is part of the Panji story cycle, which features a legendary prince of the same name, Panji. Kyong Emas is the last of the 5 stories that compose this cycle. Its title translates to Golden Snail, and for once this one doesn't star Prince Panji. This one stars his wife, Princess Dewi Sekartaji. This story begins with an enemy king attempting to kidnap Princess Dewi to make her his wife. His plan, however, is intercepted by the god Batara Narada, who transforms Princess Dewi into a golden snail. He then tells her to drift along a river in order to find her husband again. But the princess is found by an old widow instead, who keeps her as a pet in a jar. So to pass time, the princess starts transforming into herself every day, makes food, cleans, does the chores while the old widow is away. One day, the old widow, wondering who's being so kind to her, catches the princess taking care of everything. So she decides to smash her shell, smash her jar, and that therefore liberates the princess from her curse. They live together in a good life until Prince Panji finds his wife again, and then they go back to the kingdom, bringing the old widow with her, offering her a great life. In the eastern side of the globe, this is a popular story to teach kids kindness and gratitude. There's even a big IMAX theater in Jakarta, the capital of Indonesia, that's inspired by the snail's golden shell. The other 2 myths are the Korean tale of Uryongi Gaksi and the Thai story of Sang Tong. Both of them tell the story of a snail that can transform into a woman who is taken away from her husband, only for him to find her again in the end. And these 4 are stories I think may have inspired Oda for Imu, and the main reason I think Imu is a woman. But there's still one figure we have to look at who's male, and a god, before we keep moving on. That's Wayub, the Mayan god of misfortune, the man who sports a snail shell. Wayub is the god of the 5 unlucky days that happen at the end of the Mayan calendar year, which means that at each year they can kind of happen at any season given how the Mayan calendar is made. These are 5 days that were thought to create misfortune and uncertainty in people's lives. And those 5 days are also the Mayan answer to the leap year that we use. You know that thing that happens every 4 years? Like a reverie? The thing that Emu secretly lords over? With all these myths, gods, and tales in mind, let's keep on going to the clues that might tell us about Emu's backstory. One of the most imminent things to address in Emu's backstory is their probable ancient presence. And I was reminded of the most simple answer recently while watching a theory video on Emu by a friend of the channel, Prince of All Anime. Go check him out. That is Law's Ope Ope no Mi Devil Fruit. It's the simplest answer to Emu's long life, and the foreshadowing is there. The eternal youth operation that devil fruit can perform is what Doflamingo wants from Law in order to achieve his goals. Goals which, when you think about it, basically translate to wanting to be who Emu currently is. Doflamingo already knows about the Will of D, the Eternal Youth Surgery, and the Treasure of Marijois. I don't think it's off the table that he could know about Emu or at the very least suspect their existence. After all, Emu's own introduction is preceded by a monologue by Doflamingo in chapter 906. With that answered, I think that the myths that we looked at as possible inspiration are a clear indicator that Emu is some sort of noble that was captured and that probably liberated themselves during the Void Century. That is, unless the current time is when Emu is captive and they'll only consider themselves liberated once they introduce themselves to the world at large. And as far as which kingdom Emu might be from, there's only a few possibilities. First, simplest, plainest answer is Emu is from one of the 20 kingdoms that founded the world government. The second, more fun option is that Emu is part of one of the other kingdoms that was active at the time. So maybe A, Emu is from the ancient kingdom itself, which could imply a very tragic backstory, a very One Piece thing. Or B, Emu is from one of the other two very important civilizations of that era, the Long Arm tribe or the Long Leg tribe. It's an absolute possibility. After all, none of the shots of Emu that we've seen have shown us any clear indication of any proportions. Very importantly also, let's not forget that the Long Limb War happened right before the Void Century. What if Emu's tragedy happened there? Maybe they're the first long limb hybrid baby, which caused their exile. Okay, at this point I'm just spitballing, so let's wrap this up. Mini recap here is that Emu is one of the biggest challenges to Luffy's imagination and one of the biggest obstacles between him and his dreams. And that's by the simple virtue of being a Zoan Denden Mushi Devil Fruit user that's been around forever. And before we end this, I want to shout out one last friend of the crew, Doc Sake, who's been huge help with the reason you probably are here right now, the title and the thumbnail. Go check out his stuff. He has one of my favorite laugh tale theories. Also, don't forget to follow me on TikTok. There's a whole other branch of my content over there. It offers you a bunch of mini theories that are under 3 minutes long that you can watch on the go. Like and subscribe, but most of all, thanks for clicking. Thanks for watching. I think devil fruits, like Soylent Green, are people. That's right, there's no actual devil fruit tree. Dire Regulus here, welcome to the Dire Pirates. Today we will be talking about devil fruits, where they come from, how they work, and what's gonna happen with them. So let's go straight into the first part, the pantheon who became devil fruit. First things first, I think devil fruits, like Soylent Green, are people. That's right, there's no actual devil fruit tree. I don't think the Adam tree is that. I don't think there's a particular tree where all the devil fruit came from. That's just not the way it seems to work. The idea first came to me while looking at Nika's silhouette. First of all, it's very different from Joy Boy's silhouette that we've seen, which tends to make me think that both are different people, with Nika predating Joy Boy by a while. The other thing that I've noticed, especially since it's something we've seen on recent awakenings like Luffy, Rob Lucci, and Kaku, is that Nika does not have the ring of clouds that those ones have. Making me think Nika has no devil fruit. He was probably just an incredibly powerful hockey user like Shanks. Or maybe even Joy Boy like Kaido seems to imply himself. And if we take a look at that silhouette, there's probably other things we can notice. First, the sword, which may signify that Nika was a prominent swordsman. Then there's also the spear, whose tip looks a lot like the top of the head of most of the Mont Blanc family people. So there could be some links there as well. But the main thing about Nika being an incredibly powerful hockey user is I think this may have allowed him to infuse his lineage factor or life force into a fruit once he passed. The idea behind this ties a lot into stuff that's been covered by one of the great One Piece theorists out there, Parvision. I recommend going to check out his Devil Fruit Seed video, as well as his Devil Fruits Are Training Wheels for Hockey video, after this video of course, but they're great, I recommend them. So I think that Nika, and maybe other beings of his hockey level, were able to infuse the very first fruits with their lineage factor to create the first round of Devil Fruits. And from there, the Devil Fruit, through different users, advances its skill towards becoming closer and closer to an actual incarnation of Nika or the others that infused the fruit. So for example, Luffy, who managed to awaken into Nika, is probably not the first user of the Gomu Gomu no Mi. There's probably been prior users that have trained the fruit to reach back to its original level. But who could be those other beings that may have done what Nika did? Well, the first one is you, who just subscribed using your incredibly good observation hockey and liked this video at the same time. Begging aside, I think the Pantheon also included probably some members that were precursors to current races. For example, a mink, maybe a fishman, maybe even a Tontada that we know are a pretty ancient race. Honestly, if I get a chance to look a bit more into this, I'd love to maybe make a different video on the exact members of the Pantheon. But if you have any ideas of who they may be, please drop a comment and let me know. I might even go over those later on if there's enough. But if such powerful beings were required to create the first devil fruits, why did we manage in the end to get normal devil fruits like your average giraffe or your average leopard? Well, it's quite simple, and it's a concept we've seen before. As it's been said, humans used to be able to fly, but one day they stopped believing they could, so they didn't fly anymore. While the other side to that coin would be, people didn't know they could become devil fruits. Beings didn't know they could become devil fruits. Until some beings did become devil fruits. So from there, since they knew they could, they believed in it, and it became easier. And that's why I think it's time for us to kill the classifications. I think devil fruit classifications come from a place of ignorance. People of the One Piece world tried to classify the different things, but there's so much overlap in many cases, I think it's useless. And the reason for this is, if every devil fruit was a living being, well, every devil fruit is a Zoan anyways. It's all about one's desire to transfer their lineage factor. And I think desire even factors into the circulation of those fruits in the real world. Let me explain this to you in a concept I like to call the Kaido paradox. Now, the Kaido paradox is this interesting concept I came up with thinking about Kaido's relevance to the story. Wano was such a big arc. The fight on the rooftop was iconic. But what if I told you Kaido's biggest narrative importance actually happened long before that? His biggest contribution to the story would have actually happened during that very disjointed flashback that we saw. And through that contribution, he even would have caused his own demise. So basically, it goes that Kaido, through his desire to find Joy Boy, would have put the Nika fruit back into circulation. Nika, Joy Boy, they're two figures that the world government is trying to erase at their best and very little people are aware of, which is proven by Nami in a recent chapter where even she is not aware of who Sun God Nika is. So finding Joy Boy not being a common desire, the lineage factor of that fruit probably didn't feel the need to spawn itself into a fruit. But when Kaido met Albert, King, in captivity, and found out that he was hoping for Joy Boy too, while their combined desires created the needed response for the devil fruit's lineage factor to go into a fruit and go back into circulation. And around that time, the world government probably would have found it, sent who's who to get it, Hanks would have came and stolen it, and we know the rest of the story. All this culminating to Luffy awakening that same fruit and beating Kaido with it. Now, I know I've said earlier Joy Boy and Nika are not the same person, but there's been some sort of amalgamation of the two characters throughout the story in many cases. So there's definitely a relation in some way, and I'm thinking probably via the devil fruit. And I know the respawn question here seems to contradict a few things we've seen in the series, but I don't think devil fruits actually respawn immediately when their user passes. I think the conditions for the respawning of the devil fruit vary, and that desire plays a big role into it. For example, if we think about the Mera Mera no Mi, in most fictions one of the most common powers we see is the manipulation of fire. I think many people probably desire that power, so when a user of the Mera Mera no Mi passes, it's not long for the desire to be enough for that fruit to respawn in circulation. There also seems to be very specific conditions where you can create an instantaneous respawn, whether it's Blackbeard when he steals some devil fruit, or Caesar with the axolotl fruit. In both cases, the transfer of power here is almost instant, but I think we're lacking a lot of details for these instances. Just as an example, as a reverse to the axolotl fruit, Monet's fruit never respawned close by. It was even a popular theory back in the day that Monet's fruit would respawn on Nami's orange tree. That never happened. So to put it simple, the way I see it is the lineage factor of a devil fruit becomes a type of soul when its user passes, and it waits until there's enough desire for it to go and re-inhabit its next fruit. Speaking of devil fruit users, it's time that we attack one of the last aspects, awakenings. When it comes to awakenings, I think the most important factor is that your will or mind has to line up with the will or lineage factor of the devil fruit. To illustrate this, we're going to use again Kaido. So we never saw Kaido's awakening. One could suppose he was already awakened, but in most cases, awakenings have been announced. And I think there's actually a narrative reason to this. If we go and look at those that have recently awakened, we can think of Luffy, who awakened Sun God Nika, a being who wanted to put the smile on everyone's face, which fits Luffy very, very well. And there's Rob Lucci, who awakened a leopard, an apex predator. It's a ruthless killer. Again, it fits. Kaido's fruit, on the other hand, is that of a guardian deity, one of the 4 guardians of Japanese mythology. I don't think Kaido's very guardian-like. Like, not even a bit. And that's probably where the disconnect between him and his awakening is happening. But you know who else has his devil fruit? Momonosuke. Momonosuke, under the great mentorship of Kinemon, has grown to become a great ruler and will probably become a great guardian of his people. I wouldn't put it past Oda to give us Momonosuke awakening the devil fruit by the end of this story. The other thing that makes me think that this alignment is real is that one of the other people that seems to be very knowledgeable about devil fruits, Blackbeard, seems to be picking and choosing specific devil fruits not only for himself but for his whole crew. I have the suspicion it's that he wants a crew that can have all awakened devil fruit users. In this instance, I guess that it's a time will tell, probably in the close future, to see if I'm right or not. But let's move on to our final part, the future of devil.
Can't be held accountable for my words. They don't come off no factory line. They labors of love, dog.
Before we move on to the final part of this video, please make sure to follow my partner in crime, Tachi Spins.
Leadership with a friendly face.
Every Saturday, we have a fantasy draft on his channel, a live show where we select a roster of One Piece fighters to get us out of various situations and scenarios. Also, make sure to join the Discord, that'll be linked in the description. It's a great place to discuss various theories, or to get some help if you want to get your own theories out there on YouTube. So if people became devil fruit back in the day, I think that over time, other beings became devil fruits as well after that initial round. Meaning that some devil fruits have much less of a lifetime in circulation than others. Therefore, they probably have not had enough users for it to develop into its true potential. But that also means that past the initial pantheon, some people were able to become devil fruits. Which made me wonder, could anyone in the current One Piece cast become a devil fruit once they pass on? And I came up with 2 possibilities, both of which are in our beloved Straw Hat crew. The first one would be Usopp. Usopp is an amazing observation hockey user that has done some pretty fantastic feats so far. But most of all, he seems to have one secret skill, the ability to lie something into reality. Most of his lies, we know, tend to become reality, and those that haven't yet will probably down the line. So wouldn't that be amazing if Usopp can imbue his life force into a fruit and create the lie fruit? a fruit that will allow its user to tell a lie and eventually make it come true. The second one, and I believe it's our strongest case for it, would be Nami. Not only has Nami recently been hinted to have Conqueror's Haki by our big Uncle Fish Jimbei, not only that, but she has a unique skill when it comes to weather control. It's been recognized by the scholars of Weatheria. Usopp, who made the climate act, made it specifically for her because he knew that even she would use it better than he could, even though he's the inventor. And weather seems to be a hard issue to master. It's even one of Vegapunk's weak spots. And because of that, I think that by the end of Siri, Nami will unlock some pretty unreal feats when it comes to weather control. From there, she could possibly, maybe pass on, using her Conqueror's Haki, move her life force or lineage factor into a devil fruit that would allow someone to, in the future, to become the weather fruit user. Happily by then the story would be over and we would not have to see that broken fruit in circulation, but hey, that would be fun. Thanks for sticking along, but most of all, if you have any ideas of who might become a devil fruit after the story, let me know in the comments as well. I'd love to get your guys' takes on the ideas in this video, maybe go over them in a future video. But hey, in any case, thanks for clicking, thanks for watching. Hey everyone, Dire Regulus here. Welcome to the Dire Pirates. Today I will be the captain navigating you through this theory on the Will of D. The Will of D remains one of the biggest mysteries in the One Piece story, even if we are now 10,053 chapters deep in it. There's been a ton of great theories on the Will of D over the years, but I've never heard something that came close to what I came up with. First things first, I'm pretty sure the Will of D is linked to Joy Boy and the Void Sentry, as the story has implied a few times. And while many think Nika and Joy Boy are the same person, I personally do not think they are one and the same. Early on in the story of One Piece, there are some moon folk who leave the planet to go live on the moon, but eventually they come back. I think a few members of that race, and maybe others, were powerful beyond norms and were eventually recognized as gods. Nika was most likely one of those gods, and he comes from a group of warriors that are known as a pantheon that comes from a time before the Void Century. More on that bunch in my next video. And from what I came up with, the Will of D also ties into the very first Davy backfight. So if Joy Boy and Nika are not the same, Joy Boy is simply the first person that inherited Nika's will through his devil fruit. So what do we know about the Will of D? Not much, to be fair. They're known as devils, dreamers, demons, the dawn, the natural enemies or arch enemies of God. And all those answers are pretty much correct. In the One Piece world, D is a symbol, not an actual written character. When you look at Japanese names, it's the only thing that never gets translated. The D remains a D. So it's not really about the letter, but more about the symbol that it looks like. It looks a lot like a half moon, and this is not just a stretch when you look at another set of ancient families, the clans of Wano. The names associated with each Wano clan all refer to the moon in their naming convention, all using the same specific kanji character in doing so, even if there's two sounds that come out from this naming convention, Tsuki and Getsu. So again, the symbolism of the character used over the actual meaning. That kanji is called Radical 74, and if you go back thousands of years through its history, it really looks like the letter D. And on top of that, the first time we hear about the Will of D canonically from Dr. Kuroha, the next panel shows a full moon. So yeah, Wano clans would also be D members. I'll probably look in the future into other possible members of the D clan that have it hidden in their name rather than have a straight up D in their name. So that would mean that the Will of D is not necessarily directly related to Joy Boy, but to anyone who actually followed his ambitions. And there is probably way more D's than we thought. So having that said as the meaning for the Will of D, I have to figure out who Joy Boy was, what his identity was. And before we keep going into that, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell on top of it if you want. I will be releasing more content regularly. I'm trying to get on a better pace. The channel's still new, and any encouragement will really be appreciated. So we know that Oda loves real-world inspiration, and I looked into real-world pirate folklore to maybe find what Joy Boy's identity might be. And there's one particular devil of the sea that's really famous in pirate folklore that Oda has only scratched the surface with. And honestly, I think he could be the first half of Joy Boy's name. Davey Jones. Now we'll go through what Davey Jones means in terms of Joy Boy, but this is only the first half of Joy Boy's name. The other half of the name comes from one of the inspirations for the folk of Davey Jones, the Book of Jonah and its hero, Jonah. So Joy Boy's full name was Davey Jonah. I'll explain why. Why do I think it's a mix of two names of two famous figures? As much as Oda likes inspiring himself from real-life folklore and real-life pirates, when he's using a reference to a real name, he likes using just one of the names or maybe modifying the second name just to give it more flavor, more uniqueness, and make it fit the character. Jewelry Bonnie is only partly named after Anne Bonny. Eustace Kidd shares half the name of his real-life counterpart, William Captain Kidd. Basil Hawkins' real name is actually the fusion of two real-life pirates, Basil Ringrose and John Hawkins. And then we have Blackbeard, who's called Marshall Teach, which is based on real-life Blackbeard, who was called Edward Teach. Which brings us into Whitebeard. He's also a part of two pieces of pirate folk. Blackbeard himself, Edward Teach, as we just said, he has the Edward part. And the famous Newgate Prison, a prison establishment where pirates were hung. Funny enough, Captain Kidd, William Kidd from real life, was hung in that same prison. And that's why I think Joy Boy has a mix, and that he's called Davey Jonah. Oda also said in an SBS that Davy Back was a different legend than the real life Davy Jones legend. So we can play with this distinction. So let's analyze the Davy part of Davy Jonah. In pirate folklore or navigators' tales, Davy Jones is literally considered the devil of the sailor, and he is the ghost of Jonah. One of the earliest references to Davy Jones is in the story written by Tobias Smollett, The Adventures of Peregrine Pickle, published in 1751. This same Davy Jones, according to sailors, is the fiend that presides over all the evil spirits of the deep, and is often seen in various shapes perching among the rigging on the eve of hurricanes. Often seen in various shapes, if Joy Boy has the Nika fruit, he's going to be seen in various shapes. The book also describes Davy's appearance as following. Jones is described as having saucer eyes, 3 rows of teeth, horns, a tail, and blue smoke coming from his nostrils. To me, thinking with the One Piece story in mind, 2 elements pop out in that. Number 1, if we think about the horns, this could probably make Davy an Oni. Or wait, if we look at the timeline, Void Century, Horus is not even born. And the hat in Marijois is really big. So was Joy Boy an ancient giant? I'm going to go with that. Number 2, the mention of smoke. It just reminds me of Luffy's Gear's second smoke. Something that would appear when Davy uses Nika's devil fruit. And yeah, you will get Davy Jonah's tail at the end of this video. And you might be thinking, hey, there's already a Jones lineage in the story. Yeah, there is. Hody Jonah's lineage seems like the perfect cop-out for the Gorosei to like match Davy Jonah's lineage to him and have it fit with that of what they perceive as a lowlife. But in reality, the only reason Oda used the name Jones for Hody Jones is for the wordplay with the name Jaws. On top of that, the only details we ever get about Davy Jones is on Long Ring Long Island against Foxy. Isn't it odd that it's on like the only island that looks like it could have been stretched by the powers of Sun God Nika? Just saying. After all, the island's different habitable points are all separated by a high tide that can't easily be navigated. This may be a hint to the people of Tanjit's tribe, you know, the guy on stilts, being liberated by Joy Boy at some point. Like he stretched out the island like that so they could run away and not get reached out by their oppressors. And not all traditions relating to Davy Jones are negative. In real-world tradition among sailors, when you pass through the equatorial line, there's a tradition that is done where you throw a big feast, a big party, for all those that are doing this for the first time. Those who have done it before, that have passed before, are known as shellbacks or sons of Neptune. The eldest one amongst them is known as King Neptune for the ceremony. And for the duration of the ceremony, the person he chooses as his assistant is known as Davey Jones. Now, this is pretty similar to the feasts that Joy Boy likes to throw. Could also very well be a wink to Joy Boy's relation with fishmen and their kingdom. Now let's move on to the Jonah bit of the story, and this is where the meat of Davy Jonah's story would come from. Jonah is the hero of the aforementioned Book of Jonah. He appears in Christian, Islamic, and Judaic religion stories. And just if we go with the biblical level, well, it kind of fits with stuff like the Adam tree and the Eve tree. And Jonah is also known like the proto-Jesus, a precursor to Jesus. So Joy Boy would kind of be here a precursor to the better known figure that Luffy will end up being. Jonah in Hebrew means dove, which in their culture is also a symbol of peace. And at some points in history, like in 18th century Germany, the Book of Jonah was actually banned from here for when it could teach people. Kind of like the Gorosei, like to hide and bury some stuff in history to their own advantage. So let's do a quick point by point of the Book of Jonah. It's like a 5-page read, but no worries, my lazy friend, I got you. So Noah's this fella, a leader, commander of an army directed by God, who's told to go to the city of Nineveh and tell them that in 40 days, God is going to wreck their shit. All this for their sinful ways. Jonah, not being so cool with all of this, runs away to the city of Jaffa, a portuary city, which he knows will be able to get him to the city of Tarnish after that. He makes it to Jaffa, gets a crew, and sets sail to the hidden city of Tarnish. However, on his way to Tarnish, God starts a storm, symbolizing his wrath. In some versions of the story, Jonah decides to jump overboard to save his crew, to run away from God's wrath, so the crew can get away. In others, the crew are the ones who throw him overboard. In any case, once in the water, Jonah gets swallowed by a whale. He spends 3 days and 3 nights in the whale, after which he realizes the error of his ways, and he decides to abide by God's request. God then has the whale vomit Jonah out. He goes to the city of Nineveh, tells them they'll be hit by God in 40 days. The city of Nineveh decides to fast in order to repent, forces everyone, even the animals. After 40 days, God changes his plan, decides he forgives them. This angers Jonah. He asks God, if in the first place you were going to forgive them, like the loving God you are, why even make them suffer? And God kind of responds that Jonah isn't even allowed to be mad about this stuff. Things go on a bit, and the story kind of ends with Jonah being angry with God with the situation and just wishing he was dead. Now, I think mainly it's the first part of the story up to where Jonah gets swallowed by the whale that Oda borrowed from for Davy Jonah. And from there, in true Oda fashion, he turned it on its head. So let's have a look at the similarities between Joy Boy and Jonah. In the Judaic version of the story, once Jonah is in the whale tells it that they're both still gonna die because the Leviathan is after them. Jonah tells the whale not to worry and asks it to swim up to the Leviathan. He then tells the Leviathan to leave them alone, otherwise it'll leash it by its own tongue and let the other fish eat it up. The Leviathan recognizes this threat and flees in terror, so the Leviathan could easily mirror Sea Kings. The threat to leash a whale by its own tongue sounds like something that an awakened Niga would do. And the fact that the Leviathan recognized that threat, listened to it, and ran away is probably some little bit of Conqueror's hacky right there. Other interesting thing about the Book of Jonah is how many scholars throughout the years have considered it a work of parody. It points a finger at those who thought that if they didn't obey God, they would be punished and feared that punishment more than anything else. And it also laughs at those that think that God's love doesn't propagate to those who do not share their beliefs. There's also the irony that the person that God selects as his commander for his big mission is actually named Peace. Jonah's own rebellion is also a critique of the prophets and all the other stories that just follow God blindly. The story also falls into other exaggerations that are kind of on the absurd. The size of the city of Nineveh is absolutely ridiculous. And also the simple fact that the animals fast along with humans, that's kind of within the realm of the absurd. And the goal of absurdity and parody is to make you question things through comedy. Kind of a laugh tale with a message. Then there's the cities in the story of Jonah. This is where I think we can start doing some really good parallels with the story of Joy Boy. Nineveh itself, when you break down the name, is called Place of Fish. Right off the bat, we got our Fishman Island. And if Jonah is Joy Boy and God is the nobles, well, this means that Joy Boy refused the mission on Fishman Island and tried to run away to Jaffa. Now, the city of Jaffa's main descriptor in religious stories is that it is a port city, and pretty much all the islands and cities in One Piece are port cities by default, which doesn't help too much with the sense of association. But there's one thing about Jaffa. It's always on the path of famous heroes. In the case of religious texts, we have Jonah, Solomon, Saint David, and even Perseus. They all went through there. So knowing that, looking at the city's name, I think we can associate Jaffa to Jaya. Nolan, Roger, Luffy, they all went there, and it would make a lot of sense for Jaya to have also been a part of Joy Boy's adventure. And then there's the last city mentioned, Tarnish. Tarnish has a very interesting description. It is said to be a vast city or region that was known for its wealth and the important metals it imported: silver, gold, iron, and tin. Its location was never really known to the common person and was eventually lost to antiquity. So many legends exist about it that it's made it the subject of scholarly research and commentary for more than the last 2,000 years. Yeah, that's right, people. Tarnish is the ancient kingdom, or the Great Kingdom. Now that we have our locations in place, our parallels with Davey Jonah set, I'm glad to present to you the tale of Davey Jonah. Davey Jonah's origin is unclear. All we know about the man is that he was a young, ancient giant, born either in slavery or as a commoner. Early on in life, Davy has shown himself to be a powerful beast, enough to be noticed and recruited by one of the noble kingdoms of the time. That noble kingdom was one of the 20 that would eventually join an alliance against the great kingdom that was starting to dominate the globe. Once the alliance made, Davy was considered an asset. The 20 Kingdom Alliance then decided to provide him with a power-up, a devil fruit, known as the Hito Hito no Mi, model sun god Nika. After providing him with this increase in power, they gave him a mission. Davy is to travel to Fishman Island, that's been recently caught colluding with the Great Kingdom. He is to find the culprits, bring them back, or punish the whole city if they refuse to cooperate. He hates the way the fishmen are oppressed by their rulers. So Davy has a plan. He asked the inhabitants of Fishman Island to build a great ark, something big enough to transport them all, something that could be pulled by the Sea Kings. He then promises to the people of Fishman Island and the then Princess Poseidon that he would come back one day, after having convinced the Great Kingdom to take them under their banner, to bring them all with the ark to the surface. They would then, all together, enjoy a great feast in honor of their freedom. In order to accomplish this, the fishmen start building the ship that would eventually be known as the Noah. Abandoning his mission given by the 20 kingdoms, Davy makes it to Jaya, where he knows he'll be able to get a crew that will make it to the Great Kingdom, whom he now wishes to side with. Gets his crew, starts his journey to the Great Kingdom, but soon, the 20 Kingdom Alliance gets on his coattails. They start attacking Davy's ship, putting the whole crew in danger. In order to save the crew, Davy decides to jump overboard. Being a devil fruit user, he starts to sink. As he sinks deeper and deeper, he hears voices. Using this voice of all things, he starts calling to them. But it's too late. Everything starts fading away. Davy is gonna die drowning. A time later, Davy awakens, realizes he's inside a whale. His body has turned to white. He starts laughing. Hearing his laugh, the whale warns him he should stop, because they're being followed by a Sea King. Davy tells the whale not to worry and to swim up to the Sea King. Once by the Sea King, Davy uses the voice of all things to tell the creature to go away, otherwise he'll leash it by its tongue and let all the other fish eat him. Unleashes a bit of Conqueror Hacky, delivering the message just to drive it through. The Sea King, hearing this, flees away in terror. Now safe, the whale and Davy Jonah make it to the Great Kingdom. Once there, they learn that Davy has been declared dead, even though his body was never found. And this, people, is the first cover-up ever by the 20 Kingdom Alliance. Impressed by the fact that Davy is feared by the 20 Kingdoms, the Great Kingdom accepts to liberate Fishman Island, but they tell Davy that they will need more support. The 20 Kingdom Alliance is growing very powerful day by day. And Fishman Island is a strategic point for them. It's a backdoor to the New World. They will do everything to defend it. Davy Jonah assures them he will build them a force capable of increasing their army's might. He then assembles a crew of outstanding sailors from within the Great Kingdom. They then leave on a great ship, a tree rim that allows them to row when the winds are not kind. When rowing to travel, they would ask crew members to drum a rhythm to keep the pace going. With their loyal whale companion by their side, they would go from one slave-owning island to another, liberating people as they came, rallying them to the cause so that one day Fishman Island could enjoy the same fate. Over time, people would come to know the drumming sound of their incoming ships as the drums of liberation. Davy would start introducing himself to people as Joy Boy simply, preferring to increase the importance of his message of liberation over the value of his own name. Over the course of his adventure, he would recruit many tribes and different races under his banner, mostly because non-humans tend to be the most common slaves. He befriended Zunisha by liberating some minks. He brought an end to the war between the Long-Arm tribe and the Long-Leg tribe, rallying them to the cause. He freed the Tanjit tribe on the Long Ring Longland Island. Members of many other races joined as well, such as the Snakeneck tribe, the Three-Eye tribe, giants, Hinokobitos, Onis, and people of the sky races. Those who believed in Davy the most even changed their names to have it include the D symbol, to show that they were bearing Davy's will. Davey Jones also managed to secure support of the powerful kingdom of Wano, and this all culminates to Davy's attempt to liberate Fishman Island. Unfortunately, the time he's gonna have to break his promise. But on the way to Fishman Island, they are ambushed by the 20 Kingdom Alliance, assembling the biggest fleet anyone has ever seen, full of devil fruit users, some as powerful as Davy it seems. They are quickly outmatched. Trying to spare the lives of those who follow him, Davy tries to flee, but very quickly everyone is forced to run aground on the closest island, Hachinosu, the pirate island. Rapidly surrounded by the 20 Kingdom Alliance, Davy and his people come up with an idea. Davy approaches with a gamble, a game he proposes to them. Rather than losing more lives in the battle, they could hold a backfight, an event where the 20 Kingdom Alliance would get their chance to get their hands on Davy Joy Boy without losing more soldiers, and they could maybe even get some of the liberated slaves back at the same time. Overconfident in themselves, the 20 Kingdom Alliance accepts the bargain. But to their demise, after 3 days and 3 nights of backfights, they still haven't got their paws on Davy or won a single event. They start growing irritated and give a signal to their men. They start attacking Davy and his people. Even the crew members that were won in a backfight do so, ignoring the sacred rule of the Davy backfight. They get decimated. Davy and the few left have one last attempt to run away. Blaming himself for the defeat, Davy decides to stay behind, try to hold back the opposing army, just enough to give a window for the remaining ones to flee. Once he realizes his remaining allies are out of sight, Davy turns around to the sea and uses his voice of all things to call upon his whale companion. Davy Jonah, Joy Boy, turns around to the enemy forces one last time and says, "Don't worry, this doesn't end with me." He then dives in the ocean, where his whale friend swallows him one last time. A few days later, the remainder of the crew arrives to the Great Kingdom. They share the tale of Davy's legendary backfight, the tragedy of his end, and the apology they had to communicate to the residents of Fishman Island that he left with them. His legend survived him, and was even transcribed on the poneglyphs years later to conserve it. Sadly, these events were all what the 20 Kingdom Alliance needed to justify a full-on war onto the Great Kingdom. Joy Boy's failure ended up being the root of the road that would bring us to the Void Century. He was the catalyst that unleashed this war, and that's when the 20 Kingdom Alliance undertook their very first great cleansing. For the years that followed, Joy Boy was actually still alive, living inside his whale companion, tending to a modest garden. They both traveled the sea, gathering what would be the ultimate treasure. The treasure that would one day help the successor of his whale succeed where he failed. And as he got older and weaker, he one day went against the trunk of the only tree in his garden. He sat down against its trunk, leaned over, and said out to his whale companion, "Well, old friend, I think it might be the end of my journey.
But do not worry. I left that vile kingdom one last surprise that'll make you smile. If they want their devil fruit back, they'll have to come down here to get it.
With a wide smile, he kept on laughing as his whale friend joined in. Joy Boy's spirit slowly faded away from his body as the laugh ended, but the smile never left his face. 3 days and 3 nights later, Joy Boy's body was nowhere to be found inside of the whale, but on the one tree he leaned against had grown one single fruit, the only fruit that tree would ever grow. And so goes the tale of Davey Jonah, Joy Boy. Over time, the meaning of the Davy backfight was sullied. Davy's name associated with an infamous line of fishermen rather than the legend of Joy Boy. All that to hide the truth behind what launched the Void Century and the First Great Cleansing. And this concludes this theory on the will of D and the identity of Joy Boy. If you're still here, thank you for sticking through this wild ride. Let me know what you think in the comments. And if you like content like this, I have a great theory on ex-Fleet Admiral Son Goku. I'm sure you'll enjoy that too. And as always, thanks for coming. Thanks for watching.
If the events of the Void Century are significant, then surely we should be looking at the time before the Void Century to find out what led up to such an important mystery. If the poneglyphs were made in Joy Boy's time, as we know from his apology to Poseidon, then maybe Joy Boy wasn't recording the history of the Void Century, but instead the history of what happened before the Void Century. This would give context to the fact the poneglyphs are said to contain the true history of the world. So what if the Void Century is a red herring, and the real truth is what came before that? We're about to explicitly explain what the Rio poneglyphs detail, what actually happened before the Void Century, and why it is important to Imu's reign. I'm about to compress 5 hours worth of Void Century script into one simple, easy-to-digest video, so buckle up. And if you did want a deeper look at any of the sections, we have videos on each one, so feel free to check them out. This is our best video yet and goes all the way to the very last minute, so stick around for a ton of spice on the mysteries of the Void Century. Welcome back. There's been a major chapter which impacts how we understand older parts of the story. Also, Vegapunk revealed a secret in the One Piece world that changes who we might consider good and who might consider evil. Make sure to like and sub, and let's get straight into this one. As I said in the intro, the time before the Void Century might be even more important than the Void Century itself. In One Piece, we see that things often happen in cycles. However, the most important cycle is very understated. Every 1,000 years, the One Piece world is cleansed, abolishing the current status quo. In Little Garden, an island not too far off the Red Line, we hear volcanoes erupt every 1,000 years. It's likely underwater volcanoes erupt then too, causing new land to be formed from pyrobloin released by the volcanic eruptions, mixing with seawater. This new land displaces the seawater, causing floods that wipe out the history and technology of that era. Sabaody lies next to the Red Line and is shown to be surrounded by underwater volcanoes. These cataclysmic events put the world order in disarray and radically alter the geography of the planet. The story suggests each millennium is pretty much self-contained, as we have very little knowledge of what happened pre-Void Century. If this is the case, the world likely has integral forgotten history, and it's the poneglyphs that will probably hold knowledge of this. The ship being called the Thousand Sunny makes sense if the ship was built after 1,000 years of darkness. Ace was the former Mera user and said he didn't want to live for 1,000 years. Josh from TLA believes Chopper monster points tie to ancient races, and Chopper's bounty is 1,000 berries. The inhabitants of Zo have been there since 1,000 years ago, and Zunisha's age is given as at least 1,000, according to her Vivre card. Additionally, the long arm and long leg conflict started 1,000 years ago, as mentioned in Chapter 884. The year 1000 in One Piece is when Oars terrorizes the world as the country puller said to have founded a country of ruffians that he helped build by stealing the very islands he ransacked and dragging them across the seas, which earned him his epithet. Oars's epithet is often mistranslated to continent puller, despite the clear use of country in Japanese, as we see in chapter 456. When you consider all these things together, there's a pattern of non-human races, with a giant elephant, giant country puller, long arm and long leg folk, and mink. Could this be a nod from Oda toward the fact whatever happened a millennium ago involved several races that were not quite ordinarily human? The layout of the world would suggest so, with Paradise being predominantly human, and the New World being more non-human. Last but certainly not least, Vegapunk brought up the time frame of 1,000 years in his recent speech, which is a significant speech that will change the world forever. The time before the Void Century is crucial due to a global cataclysm, which included widespread flooding. Flooding and changing sea levels are heavily recurring themes in One Piece. In 1113, Vegapunk predicted a future world flood, indicating the One Piece world has experienced such events before. Many islands show evidence of varying sea levels. Long Ring Long Land, for instance, is heavily affected by tides, making it resemble a crown periodically. Similarly, Water 7 experiences annual sea level changes, exposing parts of the island and allowing inhabitants to migrate across it. This demonstrates how tides impact islands and their inhabitants' movement and settlement patterns. Wano is a raised island, isolated from the world with underwater ruins dating back at least 800 years. Alabasta shows connections to changing sea levels through sea cats, which may have adapted to these changes, and its raised capital, similar to Wano's flower capital. Crocodile's use of dance powder in Alabasta, which displaces water and creates desert, implies that water once covered more of the region. Cover stories also hint at flooding themes. In most of Vivi's cover pages, we can see objects and animals that represent a balance of land and water, including lilies, frogs, otters, and even watermelons. In Jinbei's cover story, a submerged structure has markings similar to those on Kuma's clothing, possibly linking it to an ancient sunken kingdom of the Buccaneers. Geographically, these examples demonstrate significant changes in sea levels over time. Additionally, the Roger Pirates possess skills related to flooding, adding another layer to this theme. So how do the poneglyphs hold the key to unravel Imu? If the world and most its histories kept being wiped out, then people would be left with no idea who they are, how they got where they are, and what the world is meant to actually be like. This would leave them vulnerable to someone who did know the history, as they could manipulate the truth for propaganda reasons. Someone that stayed above these global disasters, kept an eye on the coming and going of histories, and maybe even created some of these events. But how could one person control the entire globe for centuries and centuries? One possibility is by controlling the status quo, the dream in which everyone lives, or as it's also known, a reverie. Controlling the perception of the people, whether it is their belief in gods or their fear of the world government, is likely how Imu controls the Earth. Imu has controlled the world for at least 1,000 years, and there's a ton of evidence that demonstrates this. Imu does this by keeping the world in a pacified state, manipulating the histories of the world, and spreading propaganda to keep people oppressed and to prevent people from dreaming of freedom. This, in turn, has created a nightmare from which the world's population cannot escape. And Imu uses this nightmare to solidify the world government's position at the top. Not only this, but the dark forces at the top of the world government likely feed off the suffering caused by their rule, paralleled by Big Mom feeding off the lifespan of the inhabitants of Whole Cake. This is done using a contract, and we've seen this before as well, so maybe some sort of agreement was made between Imu and the 20 Kings initially, as discussed by Straw Hat Lucas in our Faustian Deal video. In summary, Imu has a monopoly on the perceived history of the world, and by preventing the true history from coming out, Imu can manipulate the dreams of the people and keep them imprisoned. Proof of this is the world government's constant attempts at suppressing knowledge of the ancient kingdom spreading, as Clover learned the hard way. The cover story that parallels Imu's hypnotic gaze cast over the people of the world is Django's. Why is the Void Century so significant? The simple answer is because the events that took place just before the Void Century were the most catastrophic the planet has ever seen. 1,000 years before the current storyline, something much bigger happened than the ordinary volcanoes and flooding, which erased the history and technology of the world. Aimu also prevents technology and history from advancing past a certain level. But why? Well, it's because the global catastrophe 1,000 years ago almost destroyed the Earth, and it was caused by man-made advanced technology. This echoes the fire thief motif we've seen. For example, with the recent chapter title referencing the Icarus myth, where Icarus flew too close to the sun, as well as Big Mom's homie Prometheus, who is the hero that stole technology from the gods and gave it to man, just for man to destroy itself with this new tech. In One Piece, the technology that these myths refer to likely blasted a hole in Eni's lobby. This grazed the core of the planet and came out the other side, pushing Laugh-Tale through the Earth, creating Reverse Mountain on the way. This would mean Laugh-Tale was upside down, giving context to quotes in the story about flipping the world upside down. Disturbing the core in this way caused the volcanoes around the equator to erupt on an unprecedented scale, creating an enormous red line and flooding the Earth. Seeing as the technology is associated with the gods, I'm assuming this refers to an energy source used to power the weapon. All this seems tied to the ancient kingdom. This technology could be solar energy, which is why Eni's lobby is now in seemingly permanent daylight. This connects back to what makes our protagonist, Luffy, so significant: the sun. So thematically, this is Oda depicting the sun almost destroying the Earth. If we do follow the fire thief myths, it could imply that Nika had his abilities stolen and given to humanity, which would be a twist on the happy tale many readers assume Nika's story to be. In 1115, Vegapunk revealed that although natural disasters do occur in the One Piece world, the destructive events preceding the Void Century were unnatural. The Lulisua hole is very similar to the Eni's Lobby hole, implying that Eni's Lobby was made by a similar weapon. In 1115, Vegapunk also states an ancient weapon is responsible for the global catastrophe 1,000 years ago, and that the weapon still exists. I discussed this in detail a few times over the past year in videos. The weapon is Uranus, and the reason why it still exists is because Oda is going to use it to take people back to the moon. Uranus is most probably what we see on one of the moon murals, as it demonstrates the capability to take people to the blue planet. The person we see holding the rod will be embodied by young Isa. The cover story that shows the process in reverse is Dr. Tsukimi's, implying the people on the moon saw explosions on Earth. I guess this gives a reason for Enel to come back, as someone will need to power Uranus again. So Uranus made the Eni's Lobby hole. And on the other side of the world is Reverse Mountain, meaning the strike could have pushed up Reverse Mountain and fired whatever island was there originally into the sky. This is reminiscent of Skypiea and the Knock-Up Stream. The fact Eni's Lobby and Reverse Mountain aren't perfectly opposite might suggest Uranus was interfered with before it had a chance to fire precisely on its target. Or perhaps a golden city conducted the strike, avoiding Uranus shooting through the Earth's core. Disturbing the Earth's core would trigger the underwater volcanoes to erupt on a scale like never before. It's possible the underwater pockets that create the Knock-Up Stream were disturbed also, causing Knock-Up Streams to set off over the entire globe. The volcanoes and underwater pockets thus mix pyrobloin with seawater, creating a composition that makes up the red line, but on a much larger scale than the standard eruptions. The fumes of such massive explosions cover the sky in magnetic materials which get spread around the newly formed Grand Line. The sky being covered also makes it dark for 100 years. This discourages the Gomu and other light or sun elements, causing ice to form across parts of the world as temperatures drop. All this newly formed land creates a huge displacement of water, which leads to flooding, all of which can now be seen from the moon. The emergence of such tall land triggers the moon people to descend to Earth, also stated to be 1,000 years ago. Union Alliance. The destruction of Eni's Lobby led to the Void Century, plunging the Earth into darkness and leading to floods that reduced the amount of habitable land. This triggered the forces of the 20 Kingdoms to ally with Imu, which they did by using a contract, as I mentioned earlier. However, this contract, as a marriage between a Nefertari daughter and Imu, I theorize Lily refused this after learning the true nature of the deal, in a scene that parallels Robin's I Want to Live arc, which occurred where? Eni's Lobby. This was likely due to Joy Boy's intervention, leading to all-out war. After Joy Boy's intervention, the alliance of 20 kings in Amu attacked the remnants of the ancient kingdom, paralleled by the fight for land in Skia, and the Joy Boy figure of Skypia being named Noland. Noland was branded a liar, the same way the D-clan are called demons. Naturally, the ancient kingdom's forces resisted any persecution from the world government, and the war grew massively. The casualties of this great conflict are shown on Whiskey Peak, which is called Cactus Island, due to there being so many gravestones on the hills that it makes the hills look like cacti. These gravestones are shown in the current story with Sora and Yorkie, suggesting ties to the ancient kingdom. Huge losses on both sides stoked the suffering of the world, and people began praying for their liberation. So, if humanity had somehow stolen technology of the gods and subsequently almost destroyed itself, why is it so important for Imu to stop technology from advancing? Does she want to protect humans? As we saw with the Mother Flame incident, Imu is clearly indifferent to human life. So why would she care? It's because Imu is afraid this type of damage will be done to the Earth again, because she is the Earth, synonymous with Mother Nature, as Vegapunk discussed about the weakness of devil fruits. Zoro is an opposite to Luffy, in the way the moon is to the sun, similar to Imu, and his mother's name is Terra, meaning Earth. The Ori at Ohara showed the Earth at the center of the solar system, which Vegapunk later reordered, putting the sun in the center. Now, think about this for a sec. What is the name of the One Piece planet? For over a year, I've had to refer to it as the Blue Planet in videos. Now, take your mind to Skypia. What was the name of one of the gods? Earth God. What's the name of the dirt on Sky Islands? Verth. So the word Earth is actually present and may indicate the blue planet was once our Earth, or at least similar to. This is highlighted with Mary Joy's castle being Pangaea, the theorized ancient supercontinent of the real world. Many have speculated Imu has ties to the Earth God fruit, or just the Earth itself. Maybe she's some form of Kleebouterman, or just some manifestation, which would explain why she'd need to body snatch Lily Nefertari like many theorize. It would make perfect sense if Imu was an embodiment of the Earth, as it would explain why Imu is indifferent to the death of so many humans. It's because humans are parasites to her planet, harming themselves as well as the Earth through pollution and war, which Oda has shown us time and time again. Why does Imu or the Gorosei not care about using humans to experiment on? Because it's humans that cause the problems the world government are trying to resolve through their experiments. That said, we can be certain Imu requires humans for some reason because of the celestial dragons. I mentioned humans have polluted the world. The celestial dragons living under Imu's rule are shown to wear helmets, and without these elements, we see their noses dribble, indicative of a cold. This is Oda hinting to us that the celestial dragons are particularly vulnerable to the outside world, which is likely because Imu controls the environment in Maryjoyce to protect whatever it is she gains from the celestial dragons. It's likely celestial dragon lineage goes all the way back to the origins of humanity on the One Piece planet, and so Imu uses them specifically, as they'd be richer in whatever resource Imu depends on them for. Maryjoyce, being a controlled environment, fits perfectly with theories from the community that Maryjoyce is a greenhouse of sorts. Now, what does a greenhouse protect its produce from? Insects, giving us an idea why the Gorosei commonly refer to humans as insects. It means they're a destructive, parasitic force. If Imu feeds off the emotion of the celestial dragons, perhaps Imu's will has been corrupted, as celestials are depicted as having rotten and corrupted personalities. But what does Imu need them for in the first place? I think a very solid potential answer to all this is humanity itself. Imu wants to feel emotion. Emotion is deeply tied to Haki, as we see with Garp's love punch, and Sanji's love kick. Haki can be used to negate the power of a devil fruit, as we saw with Law's genderbender agenda. This is reminiscent of how fear is required for Big Mom's fruit to work. Fear disrupts Sugar's devil fruit and also affects many others. So again, we see this relationship between emotions, Haki, and fruit abilities. It's said Haki is more powerful than devil fruits, so I wouldn't be surprised if it was revealed Haki is a product of humanity, which is stronger than the technology used in the devil fruits. Perhaps the fire thief motif Oda's focusing on is that the devil fruits are a product of Earth, but humanity has now taken them, leading to war and their own destruction. This definitely would be a big twist in the story, as many readers are not expecting Imu to be redeemable or justified. Ironically, we have a reversal of the fire thief motif with the God Valley incident. The location has the word God in its name and was known to contain a valuable resource that the world government chose the island for. Thriller bark is speculated by many to be a part of God Valley, which would explain why the Florian Triangle doesn't attack it, as the triangle is said to destroy ships. Bink ties to thriller bark, and you can't help but think Bink's sake somehow contains this mysterious resource at God Valley. To summarize, what is Imu's motivation? It's love. We mentioned she's Earth, and the Earth's probably damaged by humans through pollution, etc., epitomized by the Enies Lobby damage hole. This causes Imu to hate humanity, yet she requires humans for something distinctly human: emotion. I mentioned the love punch and kick, and it could be love which is the most powerful force. This might give us clues as to why Imu relates to Lily and Vivi. But it's ironic, right? The humans want to steal God's technology, a product of Earth, the devil fruits, and Imu wants to steal human technology, love. Something very interesting connected to this too is that Gonfall says he can't learn mantra. As in, maybe Mars can't learn mantra either. So perhaps the Gorosei will reveal that not all of them are capable of using certain haki, or voice of all things. There has been mentions by the Gorosei of hearing signs of life, so it has been touched on quite recently. If Imu is Earth, this has some pretty insane repercussions, as we can go back and see incidents where the Earth has behaved strangely. After Noland caused all that trouble in Skypiea, what happened? There was an earthquake, and then he got trapped in the Earth. One crazy example is Tequila Wolf. Oda just so happened to tell us the people building it don't even remember why anymore, as it's taken 700 years so far, and they still haven't reached their destination. The solution to one of the vaguest mysteries in the story is actually probably pretty simple. The land the bridge is trying to reach is gone. Either it's been destroyed like Lulisua, or it's being moved constantly away from the incoming Tequila Wolf Bridge. Now, with the metaphorical rising of the sun in the west, embodied by Luffy's revival as Joy Boy in Wano, we can assume the sun is supposed to take its place as the center of the solar system. This is why we repeatedly hear characters state Luffy draws people into him. His natural position is in the center of gravity, which is interesting considering his counterpart, Blackbeard's, ties to gravity. Imu is likely trying to prevent the coming of the sun to ensure the survival of Earth, stalling the inevitable rebirth, you could say. Now, does this mean Luffy will succeed and thus destroy the Earth? Not at all. I don't see Oda leaning into a Daenerys Targaryen situation where the reader ends up disliking the protagonist because of a sudden shift. This is where Blackbeard comes in, the man with the fruit that was said to have the ability to destroy the world. It will be Blackbeard that splits the Earth apart, and Luffy's sun god Nika fruit that will patch it back together in a new order. Not too long ago, we dropped a video about how Oda's used Christian astrology in recent chapters. For example, with the Gorosei planets all aligned on one side of Luffy to make a planetary alignment when they arrived on the island. This is more evidence that Oda is having a shift in the alignment of the current universe, and we may see something tied to all this with Punk Hazard. This is because the orrery was found in the Tree of Ohara, and it detailed the old understand of the One Piece solar system. Since then, the Tree of Knowledge has been destroyed, but Punk Hazard acts as a modern analog for the tree. It was Vegapunk who theorized the sun was at the center of the universe, and it's his brain inside Punk Hazard. So we will likely see Oda focus on the solar system again, all tying into the true history of the world being revealed. Like, comment, and subscribe. Consider becoming a member and getting exclusive content and features, or joining our Patreon and having some influence on creative decisions. As always, thanks for watching. Look after yourself. Be yourself, free yourself, and peace.